Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Wobcast 2.0. I'm your host, Mike Wobshaw, Wobby, coming to you from the road, not in the comfy confines of my home recording today. Other business has put me on the road, but not more important than being here with you all to talk Minnesota Vikings. So we record from the road, a first for me, and I'm joined as usual, though, by my partner and co-host, Giles. Hey, partner, how's it going?
Hey, happy Wednesday. Where are you calling in from today?
We are in enemy territory, Giles. We are in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, talking Minnesota Vikings on the Wobcast 2.0. So I'm halfway between Milwaukee and Green Bay, on the road for business, returning on Friday. Spent the first part of the week in Chicago. Now we are in Sheboygan. We're getting stuff done, but definitely in enemy territory. We had to stop at a couple of stores to help us out with our photo shoots, and not a lot of purple and gold walking around these parts, Giles. There's a lot of green and gold here. And I will tell you, in talking to a couple of locals, they are feeling pretty good about their team right now.
My, oh my. I mean, 6-6, they're maybe one of the most underrated teams in the NFL right now. Now, am I high on the Green Bay Packers? Absolutely not, for both Minnesota Vikings fan reason and also a football fan reason. But I think they are doing far better than what we and the collective set of NFL fans thought they would do this season. My, oh my. But I think, considering your road trip here, if you can just take a quick turn up to Detroit, I think you're going to do a full NFC North rotation to tour all the cities. But definitely a lot different divisional landscape than I expected this time this season.
It is. And isn't that what the NFL is good for?
Of course.
Surprises and twists and turns and plot changes. Yeah. So the NFL is good for that. And, the Vikings have experienced a lull of late. Even in the bye, I think you kind of couldn't help but feel a little disappointed in what happened. With some other teams winning games that you were hoping were going to lose. And the Packers are experiencing the opposite at this point in time. They're experiencing a resurgence of sorts. But we still have 5 games to go. In fact, the Vikings and Packers do play one another one more time this season. So, as my wife was sort of loathing what was happening, I was like, there's 5 games left. I know it feels short, and before you know it, the season will be over, but 5 games is a lot. A lot happens. This is a week-to-week league, as they say, and a lot's going to happen between now and the end of the season. And for the Vikings, the first step in that is a game against the Las Vegas Raiders, which we will discuss in a little more detail here momentarily. But a couple of things to get to first. I think, the Vikings emerge from their bye, Giles, and have a final stretch of games to tackle here as they look to make what really you have to term an improbable run to the playoffs, given what they've experienced, right? I mean, a really slow start, stumbling out of the gates, losing Kirk Cousins, losing Justin Jefferson. And here they sit at 500, at 6-6, experiencing some things that would have knocked a lot of teams out. But the Vikings have been resilient and have fought back and now are in position to battle for one of those last 2 wild card spots. I say last 2 because I think Dallas or Philly will certainly have one of those. One of those teams will win their division. The other will be the wild card. And that leaves 2 wild card spots up for grabs. And the Vikings are certainly in position to battle for one of those at 6-6. And in fact, right now they'd be the 6th seed. So a lot on the line still for the Vikings. And before we talked about that Raiders game, Giles, there were a few things that you and I sort of discussed that we wanted to hit on. And let's start with maybe where you would start if you were going to make a list of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And that is Justin Jefferson, who is eligible to return, is on track to return, and is, I would hope, going to return to the Vikings lineup on Sunday when they go battle the Raiders. Are you presuming he will return, or is there any part of you that wonders if he will continue to slow play this for lack of his own contract or doubt about the team's ability to qualify for the playoffs given their quarterback situation, Giles? Are you sure he will play Sunday?
Without question. I think he'll be on the field taking reps and ultimately showing the world he's back to his exact true form. And I think that comes from 2 reasons. I think he is a true competitor. I think there's been question about that in the fantasy football world, but I don't think that's ever been in question. He is the ultimate competitor. It pains him to not be on the field. But with that being said, he's also a smart player and he doesn't want to prolong his injury. So I think he played the injury correctly in terms of how many games he was out. But additionally, I think another big talking point here is that he's about to get paid monster money. And if he doesn't put himself back on the field, I think he doesn't make absolute monster money. So if he's even thinking fiscally, he needs to put himself on the field. So I don't think there's any question about him suiting up on Sunday. So I'm really excited to see that. And furthermore, when you think about kind of all the different things that the Minnesota Vikings need to address during the bye week, which obviously we're now at the tail end of that, right? There's a few things that I think the Vikings needed to address if they're actually truly wanting to make a run here. We'll get into more in a little bit, but to your point, we're now 6-6, and we have lost major elements of our team, and we're still in the dance, right? I mean, we're still in a possibility to make a run on this. Yep. And one of those is Justin Jefferson, if you're being completely honest, and the things that need to change during the bye week, and that's getting Justin Jefferson back. Now, we'll get into more of it here in a second, but regardless of who you have at center, or under center rather, Justin Jefferson is the ultimate inaccuracy eliminator. He is a guy that can make a average quarterback look great. He can make a bad quarterback look good. And that's not a comment on necessarily what our quarterback position is right now. But the point is, it elevates your game, period. It opens up other players. I think it opens up Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. It is a piece of your offense that is absolutely required. And I think we have noticed his absence in the last few games, clearly with the box score.
Don't you think that maybe the person who's seen the biggest drop has been Addison? I mean, I feel like there was a little period there where he kind of stepped up and maybe was the beneficiary of more targets because Jefferson wasn't there. But I think over time, Giles, I think that extra focus being available because Jefferson's not there to focus on, some of that extra focus was allocated to Addison, and I think that hurt him. So from a practical standpoint for a player, and then from a play calling and play design standpoint, the return of Jefferson is a big deal, I think. Plus, I think it's kind of dovetailing off of that. From an opposition standpoint, there's just less stress and strain and quite frankly, less time when Jefferson's not in the mix. Mm-hmm. For your prep. I mean, putting Jefferson back in there is like literally the defensive staff loses sleep over that. Like they sleep less because they have more things to scheme up and worry about with Jefferson. So I think from that standpoint, his return is a significant one too. So I mean, we're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill best receiver on the team. We're talking about the best receiver in the NFL is returning to the lineup. This is a significant addition. And, the Vikings have had an extra week to come up with ways to get him back, right? Mm-hmm. And to put him into their offensive flow. So I think whenever you come off a layoff, there's always a little bit of, you got to ramp it up and get back up to speed. But I think it's less than normal in this case because the way the rehab was handled and the return was handled, they were making sure he was 100%. He even made a comment, Giles, the week before the bye that, I don't quite have I get a little fatigued still. I can't quite get to top speed. Mm-hmm. And so that should all be gone now. So there shouldn't be any of that slow ramp up to get back. I think it's about as close to hitting the ground running as you can get.
100%. And I think with that speed comes the impact that you were mentioning. He is a type of player that forces defenses to change their scheme on a game-by-game basis. We need to completely adjust to try to stop him, which I think in turn then once again helps Jordan Addison. Because I think Jordan Addison is a actually great receiver, but one thing he has definitely going against him is that he's a small guy. And I think with the absence of Justin Jefferson, it forces teams to then say, all right, we're going to focus completely on Jordan Addison. And with the double and triple teams that they have been putting on him, he hasn't been able to overcome that due to his size. I think he's a great route runner, but he can only do so much with his physical nature. So I think you're actually maybe going to see a Jordan Addison coming out party again with Justin Jefferson being back on the field because all the attention will be applied to JJ.
Yep. Yeah, good point. All right. So we align there. We both expect to see him Sunday, and we're both anticipating maybe not much of a ramp-up process there, and it's almost plug and play, so that's good. Mm-hmm. I think there may be another topic here that we're going to talk about that may offer we may offer the audience a little bit of a divergence here, possibly, and that's the quarterback situation. Now, I believe that. Would you agree, Giles? We didn't get to talk after the last game because I was out. Would you say it was fair to say that head coach Kevin O'Connell was less than reassuring for Josh Dobbs after the last game? Yeah, I don't. And now maybe I've missed a headline or a quote or something since I've been on the road here the last few days, but I don't think it's been clearly stated who's going to play quarterback. Do you think it's clear?
Yeah, it is not clear at all. And I think that is evident for a couple of reasons. I think one, if you rewind the clock back to the Chicago Bears game, I think it was evident through the play calling that Kevin O'Connell was not trustworthy of the current quarterback under center. All due respect to everyone involved, if you're looking at spade to spade, his play calling indicated he did not trust the quarterback, right? And I think that ultimately is what caused us to lose the game. Now, you can make your accusation on whose fault that is. Like, should Kevin O'Connell have switched out quarterback mid-game and tried to find a quarterback he does trust, or adapt his play calling to fit that quarterback? There's a lot of different options that we can chat through. But I think, one, his play calling clearly indicated that he did not trust Joshua Dobbs in that game. And obviously he threw 4 interceptions. So that's obviously an issue. But the other was in the post-game presser after the game. He was directly asked who would start. And he declined to answer. He's like, well, we'll figure it out. Right. And I think that definitely goes to show that is clearly under evaluation. Now, I mean, from a face value standpoint, you have 3 separate options. You have Josh Dobbs, obviously. You have Nick Mullens, and then you have Jaren Hall, or secret option D if you want to bring in someone else that's a free agent. But all intents and purposes, I think you have those 3 options. And the fact that they're not committal to that tells me that they're going to make a change. You tell me if you would disagree based on what you're hearing out of the building. But I think when you evaluate all 3 options, Josh Dobbs, although he is a great backup, he has tremendous upside. I do think he is still a backup. I think he is one of the best backups you can have in your locker room, where if he has to step in a pinch, he's a guy that can make plays, right? But when you think about his strengths and weaknesses, and more specifically on the weaknesses, he is not a great accurate passer. Now, JJ could maybe help eliminate that, like I was talking about before with the inaccuracy eliminator. But Josh Dobbs offers a mobility and a scramble nature to him that can save plays. But when forced to stay in the pocket, I think he struggles with picking apart defenses. And I think it was evident against the Broncos and the Bears. Both units, both the Broncos and the Bears, are very good. They are above average at playing contain against mobile quarterbacks. If you're looking at, the kind of the defensive structure in both teams, they were great at rushing the C gap, and that contained Josh Dobbs. And that either led to the play failing, or like clockwork, Josh Dobbs would immediately run backwards, and then it would ruin all the blocks, making Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw look horrible. So I think our offensive line play, while Kirk Cousins was in the lineup, they were playing Pro Bowl level across almost every position. And now they've been looking relatively bad the last 2 weeks. And I think that is directly applied to the style of play that Josh Dobbs brings to the table, which I don't mean to completely tear it apart, but it's that much different than Kirk Cousins, even down to the drop back cadence. I think Kirk Cousins, love him or hate him, one thing he is phenomenal at is he is Mr. Consistent with the number of steps he takes backward in a drop back. And Josh Dobbs, almost every play is different. And if you're an offensive tackle, that is a nightmare because you have no idea what lanes you're trying to protect. And so all that to say, that thing is falling apart. Now, if you're looking for consistency, I would be of the frame of mind to try to make a change at quarterback, which then brings you to a Nick Mullens or to a Jaren Hall, which we can chat through. But what are your thoughts on that when it comes to Josh Dobbs?
Yeah. I think you're as usual, you're very sharp today, Giles, on some of those points. I mean, the running back, I was in the building for the Bears game. I mean, the quick-natured fleeing of the pocket and running backwards thing absolutely wreaked havoc on the offensive line. I mean, if you're an edge rusher, there's nothing better. So often, edge rushers, when they execute a pass rush, you see them, they're on the outside, they're trying to get around the tackle, and then they fly past the quarterback, right? Yep. You see that a lot.
Yep.
That's because the quarterback has reached the top of his drop and he has stepped up into the pocket, like climbing a ladder. Climb the ladder back up into the pocket to make a throw.
Yep.
And and you're alluding to this, the way the pass protection is designed, it's literally lanes for you to throw through, to see through and to throw through within the pocket. Now, you get pressure from the middle, from the inside, you got to dance around a little bit or maybe even leave the pocket. But the edge rushers getting around the tackles is okay if you step up into the pocket. And that was not happening with Dobbs against the Bears. He was playing into the hands of edge rushers. I think even against Denver that was happening. So you're totally right. And I've been critical in the past of saying when everything operates perfectly around Cousins, he's great. But if he has to improvise, he struggles. And I think what we're seeing is it wasn't all just, it's happening perfectly around Cousins, so he's performing well. Cousins is a big reason why it was operating perfectly, right?
That consistency allowed everyone else to have predictability to their game.
Yeah. And so I certainly do not think the Vikings, head coach Kevin O'Connell made it clear that Dobbs was playing. I read it the same way you did. Now, it's okay for that to happen after a game, after an emotional loss, after a close game, whatever. But usually the next day or soon after, either via a press conference or an intentional leak of information, a vote of confidence comes out about the quarterback.
And that was indicated yesterday. Actually, Wes Phillips came out and said that they will be announcing the starting quarterback today, which in my opinion also says, hey, we're thinking about, if you're having to think about who you're playing at quarterback, I think that's almost assuredly an indication that you're changing, right? Yeah, if you plan to keep with Josh Dobbs, you wouldn't have said that because that creates doubt in the mind, right? Exactly. So I think it all but confirms they're going to make a change, which then leads you into the Jaren Hall or Nick Mullens conversation.
All right, so I truly don't have a good sense or feel for it, in reading the tea leaves and reading between the lines. I think I'm inclined to, if it was my call, I'm inclined to lean toward Mullens, Giles. His knowledge of the offense and his experience in the past in this role is why. I think that he settles things down. I think that other players like Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, Oliver, Darrisaw, O'Neal, I think that other players can rest easy knowing if I do my job properly, the quarterback is going to do his. Now, he may not have as good of an arm as Kirk Cousins. He may not be quite as accurate as Kirk Cousins, but Mullens is not going to hang me out to dry. By virtue of the fact that he's got inexperience or he doesn't know the offense or whatever. So I think that Mullens' presence would ease the anxiety of a lot of the other players. So, and I think coaches desire that, make the routine plays routinely. They desire that consistency, that safety. They like to be conservative in lineup decisions in that way. So that's what I think I would do, and that's what I'm anticipating. But I don't stand on the table and pound my fist saying that's the way it should go. I think there's a very compelling case for Jaren Hall, and I'm anticipating that you're going to make that case. But I'm more on the Mullens side.
And I totally understand that logic, and I think it really depends on what frame or what lens you're looking at the team at right now. If you're looking at it from the lens of winning as many games as possible in 2023, I could definitely be argued into the Nick Mullens conversation. But with that being said, I'm trying to focus on both now and in the future. And maybe I'm improperly weighting this against the Josh Dobbs conversation. But when I look at Jaren Hall, in my opinion, he actually presents the best option because when I look at Nick Mullens, I see someone that is an aggressive backup. I think aggressive is maybe the proper term. He's a guy that likes to push the ball down the field, but also presents some turnover tendencies. When you look at his past, he'll push the ball down the field, but he's also going to throw some turnovers. And I think that is also one of the indictments against Josh Dobbs is that he can move the ball down the field, but he's going to throw some turnovers. So when you think about the reasons that we have lost every game that we've lost this season, it has been directly because of turnovers, in my opinion. Remove those and we win those games, period. We're one of the best teams in the league in a lot of categories, except for turnovers. That is train wrecked our team. So if you're trying to remove that part of the formula, part of the equation, I think Nick Mullens is kind of a concern from that standpoint because he does turn the ball over a lot. Now, I do think he does know the offense a lot better. So if you're looking for a certainty, Nick Mullens is your guy, right? If you want the best certain option at quarterback, I would be inclined to agree with you from Nick Mullens. However, I am looking at it from the lens of this year and next year because you have a big decision to make at quarterback. And I believe that Jaren Hall is the one guy in your quarterback room that you don't have complete certainty on. And I look at that from the standpoint that you should go figure out if he is that guy. Is he a backup or is he your future? And let's get a determination on that. If you play him for a game or two and realize that he's not the guy, that's not a bad thing. That is a determination you're able to come through from then that helps you make a decision, in two to three games, like, let's put in Nick Mullens. And also, more importantly, at the end of the season, we now need a different option at quarterback. Josh Dobbs is clearly not the long-term option. Jaren Hall is not the long-term option. It provides a lot more clarity in your decision-making. Furthermore, when we have put in Jaren Hall, he has not been a train wreck. Now, albeit he's had very limited snaps. When he did play, I was very, very intrigued by his performance. He was mobile. I think he's honestly a little bit more accurate than every other quarterback we have in the locker room. You could make an argument against Nick Mullens, and I'll have that conversation, but I do believe he's one of the most accurate people we have in the building outside of Kirk Cousins now. So if you think about that, if we can eliminate the turnovers with Jaren Hall, I'm inclined to go that option.
Interesting. I think, and I'm not surprised that you were able to make the argument compelling. That is certainly the other side of the coin, and it's a good one. And Jaren Hall was not a first-round pick, but he also wasn't, something they picked up off the scrap heap. I mean, they obviously saw something or enough in him to believe he'd have a chance to take him where they took him. So, you do right by your draft process to give the guy a shot when an opportunity is there and you're not forcing it. And playing Jaren Hall right now would not be forcing it. And you would gain a lot by what you're saying is you gain by getting an answer. It might not be the answer you hope for, but it's an answer, right? Yep. And so often there are quarterbacks probably who never got the chance to give the answer, and Jaren Hall would have the chance to give you the answer. So there's certainly value there. And if you're going to experience turmoil, uncertainty, and substandard production, why not experience that while also gaining an answer to the Jaren Hall question overall? So that's a good thought, Giles. We'll find out what they're going to do here very shortly. I do think, though, that there needs to be a heavy emphasis, whatever the decision they make, the narrative around that by Kevin O'Connell needs to be, we're all in on 2023 because Jefferson's coming back. The defense is playing great and has bailed you out and has kept you in this. And the NFC, after San Francisco and Philly, the NFC is, right? I mean,
it's ripe for the taking.
There's
actually a realistic route.
Yeah, and I am not going to be one to sit here and predict that the Vikings could get in and go to San Francisco and win and go to Philadelphia and win and go. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that a playoff spot is there for the taking. And so I think the Vikings should be focused on winning this year. And if they go to Jaren Hall, it's a little bit of a long play or a futuristic play, but they should spin it and talk about they think he can win enough games to get them into the playoffs. That they should spin it that way.
Yep. And if you are comparing Jaren Hall and Josh Dobbs, I actually think if you were to run both of those scenarios in an isolated environment, I actually think you maybe have the exact same record. Now, that is me trying to be conservative on my estimate with Jaren Hall. I actually think he could be a good quarterback, but if you try to compare those, I think you actually have the same number of wins because of the amount of turnovers that Josh Dobbs provides. So if you're comparing those two as the guys that you want to move forward with, Jaren Hall is my pick. Every time. I mean, the Pasternaut is a fun story, but I think his turnover potential, teams have now figured out the game plan against Josh Dobbs, and I think he's going to train wreck your ability to go win games. But with that being said, I truly think if you do put Jaren Hall into the game, both scenarios that I see in an outcome are wins. If he starts winning, Like then you've proven, we stumbled into a guy in the later rounds of the draft. This is awesome. Now we know how, maybe let's build our team around this. Or if he's horrible, you have now proven that, and now more than likely you're 6-11. I mean, a little bit less than that. And now you're maybe going to have a fringe top 10 draft pick, which now puts you in a position to maybe go draft a quarterback if you do want to go that direction, right? And I think because he's been in the locker room since training camp, that's a lot better than Josh Dobbs, who's only been there for a few weeks. So I think he knows the playbook a lot more. But I mean, ultimately, there's a chance that Nick Mullens is going to be under quarterback, especially, you can speak to this more considering the Wilf's posture on paying people, but Nick Mullens is making the most amount of money in everyone in the quarterback room. So at the end of the day, there's a chance that may shed some influence on the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's not, hey, who's making the most money? Let's play that guy. And I know you're not saying that, but it's like they chose to pay Nick that amount of money, which tells you they have a certain amount of confidence and belief in him, which tells you maybe that's what they're going to lean on when they're unsure of what to do, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it will not surprise me if they go towards Mullens at all.
Yeah.
And I think you make a good point that whether they go with Dobbs or Hall, the record might be the same, but I don't think the benefit is the same. I think the benefit of getting an answer on Hall outweighs any benefit that Dobbs gives you. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go. We'll find out here maybe as soon as today. We're recording on Wednesday. I'm sure word could certainly spread about who the Vikings decide to go with, because whoever they've decided to go with is going to get all the reps at practice today. And media will be covering the early part of practice. And even when media leaves, sometimes word tends to get out on what happens at practice. So before we cast our gaze toward the Raiders and preview that game, Giles, one more. Bye-week self-scouting changes. Are you anticipating anything in particular? Are you hoping to see anything in particular for the Vikings now that they've had a little bit of extra time to scout themselves and then will emerge from the bye on this 5-game stretch with some of those changes in tow? Anything in particular you're hoping for or anticipating?
One comes from the running back room. I think based on the last maybe 3-4 games, I think it's proven that maybe Ty Chandler needs to get a lot more involved in the running back room. Now, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Ty Chandler fan, but I'm also not against him on the same notion. But I think Alexander Mattison has proven that he cannot be the bell cow that we maybe need him to be. So in the spirit of building a running game that is at least a threat to opposing defenses, we need to be able to be a little bit more consistent with the run game. And Alexander Mattison has been a little bit of a kind of a hindrance to that. So I do expect the lion's share, or not the lion's share, but I think the running back reps will be a little more evenly distributed to be able to actually achieve, once again, that threat at the running back position. So I do expect the run game to maybe look a little different coming out of the bye.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think it's going to be a constant mix and match, and ride with the hot hand or give a guy a break and let the fresh legs come in. I think the opportunity was there for Chandler to sort of steal it away from Mattison, but I don't think he's quite performed perfectly either.
No, so I completely agree. Not asking him to be the bell cow either.
Yeah. I think in a way Mattison dodged a bullet because he sort of underperformed, which opened the door for Chandler, but Chandler didn't really jump up and grab it. So I think they got 1A and 1B there at running back, but maybe the bye week gave O'Connell a chance to scheme up some things for Chandler, time that he doesn't have in a typical week when he's breaking down what just happened and then getting ready for an opponent. He didn't have time to focus on Chandler. Like maybe part of Kevin O'Connell's, maybe he had like a 6-hour Ty Chandler time, to figure something out for him. So we'll see. All right. So perhaps in the running back room, I have one, but I'll let you lay out any others that you have, and then I'm going to get to mine.
Well, this may touch on yours a little bit, but I think it partially references what you just mentioned in our previous conversation. But I think all these different conversations are really in tune, where I think depending on the quarterback that Kevin O'Connell puts under center, I think that's going to have a direct impact on the play calling and the scheme that we move forward. There was even a loose mention during Kevin's previous press conference that he was open to changing the scheme to fit the quarterback. So I think there's a chance that we're going to see some new looks, things that we haven't seen before. Now, normally that would really scare me midseason, considering like when you just started to hum in a lot of categories, then Kirk Cousins went down. You had a few like, wow, unexpected games with Josh Dobbs.
Yeah.
But I am a big fan of the talent that we have on this roster, especially with Justin Jefferson back. Even though he was out for a few weeks, he's still a top 5 receiver, statistically in pretty much every category. You have one of the best left tackles in the league, one of the best right tackles in the league. T.J. Hawkinson is the 6th best tight end in the league right now. Josh Oliver is the 4th best tight end in the league right now. You have some phenomenal talent on offense. So I think if you're going to change up the scheme, this is the unit to do it with, right? So I think you're potentially going to see some adjustments to how our offense operates.
Yep. I don't disagree with that. My sort of curiosity or like excited anticipation of a bye week scouting adjustment is with the defense.
Okay.
Flores. Yeah, and I think so. You know how like a team, they can say, the bye week comes at a bad time for this team. They've won 4 straight and they're going into the bye,
Mm-hmm.
I think if you sort of go a little bit micro on that, the bye week came at an unfortunate time for the Vikings defense. Like the Vikings defense was smoking hot,
Top 5 in a lot of categories.
Yeah, I mean, they're on fire right now, man. They're playing great. I mean, I think the last 2 games they have not given up a touchdown, and the Vikings are 0-2 in those games.
Yep,
I believe, right?
So, 100%. And that the defense was not the reason we lost those games. Yeah. In fact, like if you were to kind of encapsulate that, before the season and say that you could do that, we would have said we have the best defense in the league.
Yeah, so they're playing great, man. And so now I'm anticipating not that the bye week has cooled them off and slowed them down. And I'm not even anticipating like, Flores had a week, he's going to come out and they're just going to look way different. I think they stay true to who they are, and who they are is aggressive. They bring a lot of pressure. They blitz and pressure a lot. They get to the quarterback, and they're able to cause the other team to get out of body and make mistakes.
Yep.
And I think that's who they should remain. But I am sure that if you got Brian Flores into a room, cut open a vein, and got him to be honest with you, he could pinpoint 3 or 4 things that he would want to clean up and get a little bit sharper at.
Yep.
And I expect those things to be cleaned up and to be very sharp. So I'm not anticipating like all of a sudden, this thing's going to be way different. But I'm expecting the Vikings to be much sharper and much more cleaned up on defense. And really, I think the Raiders and the Bengals are going to have a hell of a time scoring points against the Vikings. I expect both the next 2 opponents to have. I don't know if the Vikings will win those games.
Yep.
Because I'm not sure the Vikings are going to be able to score a lot of points either. But now the Lions, have some weapons on offense and aren't as mismatched. But I think the Raiders and Bengals are going to. They've got a tough road to hoe against this Vikings defense. So I'm very excited to see an even more buttoned up, put together, and well-orchestrated defense by the Vikings. I think Brian Flores has been terrific, and he's had a week now to sort of cover up some ailments and figure some things out. And so I'm expecting the Vikings defense to really sort of not be under the radar good anymore. I think they're going to be like on the radar good coming out of the bye.
I think that's a very astute comment and observation because when you look at the Minnesota Vikings through the first maybe 3-4 weeks, we struggled in coverage some. I wouldn't say we were a complete train wreck as a defense, but there was definitely some struggles because we were getting very aggressive on blitzing and we got burned for it in a lot of contexts, especially I think week 3. But since then, I think Brian Flores has done a brilliant job adapting the back end to be able to cover up any holes because ironically, I heard this stat recently and I'd love your feedback on it. It's kind of a polar opposite paradigm here, but the Vikings lead the NFL in 6-man rushes. Okay. They also lead the league in 3-man rushes. Which is very interesting when you look at the kind of the approach, because people would say they blitz all the time, and there are all scenarios where they completely back off, right? But almost every snap, they have 6 men on the line of scrimmage, right? Yeah. And quarterbacks have no idea what's going to happen. Like sometimes they have Josh Metellus lining up in the A gap. Like, what are you supposed to do with that, right? And I think we've been able to confuse opposing offenses on what we're trying to do. And I think through the first couple weeks, we really struggled with how to maintain the back end so you don't get absolutely slaughtered when you blitz. And I think we've done a very good job ever since trying to button that up and adjust the coverages to be able to exploit that and make opposing offenses operate super fast. And we have destroyed, especially as of late, offenses on being able to achieve what they wanted to achieve because they couldn't do it quick enough. So I'm really excited for that. And even throughout the entire course of the season, all things considered through the first 3 to 4 weeks when we were struggling, we're still 5th in fewest touchdowns allowed defensively.
Oh, wow.
We are 9th in first downs allowed. We are 10th in best, yards per play allowed, or 10th best. We're 7th in fewest rushing touchdowns. We're 8th fewest points per game. We're top 10 in every category with the entire season. Under a microscope, when you look at the last, maybe 5, 6, 7 game sample size, we are top 5 in almost every category. We are humming. And I think, like you said, we are now going to be an on the radar type defense.
I think so too. Yep. Interesting stat on having the most 6-man, the most 3-man. I would guess. I'd love to, tell Flores that and ask him why. Like, why do you think that is? Because he probably would know. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is a basic explanation for it. Maybe it's right. But you touched on it. I think it has to do with showing that look, and then you either go with it, like you show 6 and rush 6, right? Or you show 6 like you're coming, and then you're not coming at all, and you only send 3, and you're dropping everyone else in coverage. I think it might be a function of that.
Yeah, very clearly relying on the player's intelligence, saying, "Hey, here's what it is. If you see this look, go. If you see this look, go. Then drop back." Right. And being able to adapt on the fly.
Yes. Because if you're the quarterback and you see a 6-man pressure look, you're probably you're probably adjusting that.
Yep.
And what you're adjusting to is the quick game.
Yep.
So now you snap the ball. And even if they don't bring 6, you've adjusted all your routes to the quick game. So you're going with the quick game against a 3-man pressure look, which isn't good either.
Yep.
So,
exactly. Forces teams to check down.
Right. Yep. So, all right. Interesting. I'm gonna turn our attention here to the Raiders, unless you had anything you wanted to get to before that.
No, let's head to Vegas.
All right. Let's indeed head to Vegas. The game is on Sunday, Giles, 3:05 p.m. Central Time, broadcast by Fox at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Vikings versus Raiders. Yours truly will be in Sin City for the festivities. Looking forward to that. The Vikings come in at 6-6, fresh off their bye. They're 4-2 on the road. Vegas comes in at 5-7, also off a bye, so they're rested and ready to go. And they are 4-2 at home. Vikings installed as 3-point favorites. I think it might actually have been 3.5, and now it's down to 3. The total on the game is 40.5. The Vikings would be in the playoffs if they started today, Giles, as the 6th seed. The Raiders would be far out of the playoffs. In fact, the Raiders have had a lot of turmoil in their own right, even more than the Vikings. They've gone away from Jimmy G. Aiden O'Connell is now their quarterback. They also fired their head coach, Josh McDaniels. Now their interim head coach is Antonio Pierce, former Giants linebacker, who's taken the reins there in Vegas as the interim coach. A few comments I've made already today would probably indicate who I think is going to win this game. But let's get into breaking down the game, what you expect, and get into our predictions here, Giles. From a game flow standpoint, I'm expecting it to be a little herky-jerky from an offensive standpoint. I think Jefferson coming back is great. They have Devontae Adams, who's awesome. They also have Josh Jacobs, who has had some impressive performances here of late and is a really talented runner. So it's not for lack of talent in some spots. To me, it's more quarterback play and then quality of defensive playmakers on the other side, I think is going to lead to a fairly lackluster offensive outing for both sides. So I see a low-scoring game here. I see a herky-jerky, probably some turnovers, just some very uneven offensive play in this game on both sides. So I expect it to be a little bit of a grinder and a low-scoring game. What are you anticipating?
I completely agree. I think for all the reasons that you mentioned, I think on paper they have some decent players on offense, but they've really struggled this season. Even Devontae Adams, who not that long ago was considered the best wide receiver in football, is now, in my opinion, playing at a slightly above average level. I mean, he's still a great player, don't get me wrong, but his performance has severely declined. Now, maybe that's because of quarterback play. I think also he's aging out a little bit. I think there's a chance that that's happening. But at the end of the day, I think that's something for the Minnesota Vikings to exploit, especially considering our defensive output as of late. So really excited to see the kind of the defensive performance that happens. With that being said, I think considering the Vikings' deficiencies at the quarterback position, I do think we're going to struggle a little bit, so I do expect this to be low scoring. Now, the one thing I'll keep in my back pocket here is that I know Kevin O'Connell is quite I don't want to call him an ego-driven personality, but he does not like to lose. Now, obviously, everyone in the NFL is that way, so don't get me wrong. But I think with the bye week, I really expect some enhanced creativity coming from Kevin O'Connell. So although I am predicting a low-scoring game, I would not be surprised if we are surprised and he comes out and he goes gunslinging and we put up 30. If he really is able to figure out, all right, I had 2 weeks to prepare for this, I am not going to get embarrassed in Sin City. Nice. So I think there's definitely an element for that, but I do expect this to be a low scoring game.
Yeah. And that would be really cool if Kevin could do that, and some of the better offensive minds in the game in history had a tendency to have performances like that coming off of a bye, Andy Reid comes to mind as someone who's very adept at that. And I think Kevin O'Connell has that to him, has that cerebral, creative, competitive strand in his DNA that would lead him to be a good – like it won't surprise me if when his career's done, you look at Kevin O'Connell off a bye and it's very impressive. Like that's a thing I could totally see being a calling card of Kevin O'Connell. So that's a good point. Yeah. I have one concern from a personnel standpoint. And that's Max Crosby.
One of the best in the game.
Yep. Now, the Vikings have a great set of tackles. So no matter where Max lines up, which side, the Vikings have someone who's up for the challenge. But this man is an animal. And he's one of those guys who can ruin a game if he is not neutralized. So the Vikings, that's probably, I would imagine, number one on their to-do list, is on offense is like, we got to block Crosby. But after that, no disrespect to them, but after that, I think it's a group that you can sort of get after and attack. But you got to take care of Max Crosby.
Yep, I think you're going to see a lot of chip blocks with Josh Oliver and Brian O'Neill. I really think they're going to try to double up over there to try to put that element out of the game. I completely agree. Because he is definitely a force to be reckoned with. I think he's a top 5 tight end or a top 5 edge rusher right now, and I think in some categories he is number 1. He is a phenomenal force, and that's really kind of a commendation to him because he doesn't have a lot of great elements on the other side. I mean, I know you have Malcolm. It's pronounced Kunze. I always forget the exact pronunciation, but he's having an okay season. But he's definitely not a showstopper. So Crosby has been able to do that well by himself, not having an elite force on the other side. So definitely something we need to consider. But I do think considering our tackle unit and with the introduction of Josh Oliver, I think we're going to be able to scheme around that.
Yep. So I think that. I see the Vikings landing at about 20 points in this game, and I think they get a couple of touchdowns, one maybe in a sort of organic way, but I think they get a touchdown here by winning the field position battle. I do not think the Raiders are going to be able to move the ball consistently down the field to flip the field position, so I think over time the Vikings will get a touchdown in the second half. That is a product of sound defense, Raiders punting a lot, and either a poor punt or a good punt return for the Vikings or a poor punt for the Raiders. Something like that will happen in combination with constantly the Raiders hitting their head against the wall. So I think a touchdown in the first half with Jefferson or Hawkinson. I think a touchdown in the second half because of sound defensive play, a couple of field goals. I think the Vikings get to 20, and I don't see the Raiders being able to get there. So I see 20-14. Minnesota winning. Vikings will win, they will cover, and the game will go under. How about you?
There you go. I actually predict a little bit higher. I think it's going to be more of a 24-16 Vikings win. Now, there's a piece of me that wanted to say 24-12, but I think there's maybe going to be some squeakers there at the end where the Raiders are going to be able to get a little bit higher. But I do expect this to be a relatively handily won game. But I do expect the Vikings to be able to squeak into a 24-point victory.
And it would be a big one for the Vikings if they could do that. Moving to 7-6 would certainly keep them in the driver's seat of the wild card chase in the NFC. A loss here for Minnesota is really going to put them behind the 8 ball and is going to put their playoff chances in severe jeopardy. So it's a very although we aren't impressed with maybe the caliber of teams in that wild card chase, it is at least a very saturated market for those wild cards. So winning is obviously important here for the Vikings, and then they have another winnable game next week with the Bengals, although the Bengals looked a lot better this past week in their victory on Monday night. But Vikings in position here to be in that wild card chase and sort of stay at the forefront of that, still controlling their own destiny, which is all you can ask for, especially for a team that's lost its quarterback, lost its best receiver for a while, and has faced a lot of adversity. So I'm looking forward to the Vikings emerging from their bye, Giles, and giving the Raiders a good run for their money. Anything we didn't get to here? I'm sure your notebook is chock full because we haven't had a chance to record in a while, so I don't want to leave anything on the sidelines here.
I think we've covered everything we need to cover for the Vegas game. I think I'm hoping that we have Victory Monday formation afterwards so we can continue on with the success here, but we'll continue rolling with the punches.
All right, sounds good. We thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Wobcast 2.0. We encourage you to like, subscribe, and follow us and the Wobcast 2.0. You can do that wherever you follow all your other favorite football content, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Please follow along, join the conversation, like, subscribe, and follow. On behalf of Giles, this is Wobby signing off for now. Vikings Raiders on Sunday. Enjoy the game, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week. Until then, Skol Vikings.